So right now I'm working with 3 different crowdfunding sources, and it's changed my whole business because the banks have just gotten so conservative, it's hard to get money from them. And I feel like what's growing up in the U.S. is almost an alternative banking system. There's a lot of new companies getting into this, and I think it's an investment source as well as a funding source of the future, and it's going to be huge.
This is The Entrepreneur Way with Neil Ball. Unlocking the secrets of successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball. Napoleon Hill said the power of the mastermind is the driving force. To discover how you can unlock the potential in your business using the power of a mastermind, go to mastermindunlimited.com. And now, here is your host, Neil Ball.
Hello everybody, it's Neil Ball here. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Entrepreneur Way. The Entrepreneur Way is about the entrepreneur's journey. The mindset, the vision, the commitment, the sacrifice, failures and successes. I'm so excited to bring you our special guest today, George Zweifler. But before I do, I've got a little quote for you. Mike Wallace said, "I cared enough to read and look at and worry about the questions." The Entrepreneur Way asks the questions, so we all get the insight, inspiration and ideas to apply in our businesses. George, welcome to the show. Are you ready to share your version of the Entrepreneur Way with us?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. George Zweifler spent 25 years in high tech, and George and his partner built one of the largest manufacturer representative companies in Silicon Valley, growing to over $300 million in sales per annum. George started investing in real estate about 10 years ago for himself, and as he became more successful, many of his friends wanted him to help them. George and his partner, Michael Hilghman, formed Palms Asset Management in 2014. They do turnkey income investments for people wanting to create safe, passive income in real estate. George, can you provide us with some more insight into your business and personal life to allow us to get to know more about what you do and who you are?
Yes. Well, as far as my personal life, I'll be brief on that. I've been married twice. Mm-hmm. I jokingly say I'm either bad at picking partners or bad at marriage. But my second marriage lasted 14 years, and my wife and I have been apart for the last 2.5. I have 2 children, one from each marriage, a 27-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. I live in downtown San Jose, California. And my life is interesting because I currently travel back and forth between Florida, which is where all of my investment properties are, and California every month, spending about 15 days a month in California and about 10 to 15 days a month in Florida. As far as my business life is concerned, I guess the shortest answer again is when I was looking at my retirement, I was always calculating using money managers were telling me figure about 6 or 7% a year on your savings. And I kept concluding that I needed to save about $4 or $5 million in order to have any type of a retirement, which I started to believe I wasn't going to get to that number. So I continued to look for ways to do better safely than 6 or 7%. And I believe I found it. And the properties that I'm buying for myself and investors, we're averaging anywhere from 12 to 16% income on the investment. So I'm now in a position where I'm able to take, probably $1 million and live the way somebody can live that has to save $3 or $4 million. I'm very excited about it. And my business is based on the idea that I want to share it with other people.
Sounds fantastic. So can you just tell us a little bit more about how you actually do, how people can invest with you and how it works? Because I'm fascinated by what you just said there. So,
well, the way they invest with us is basically all they really need to do initially is just tell me that they're interested in working with us. They don't have to commit anything up front. It's a very flexible model. And as we find properties, we put them out to the investors, and essentially we show them the property, we show them what it's worth, and we show them what it's renting for. And I mean, we have an entire spreadsheet. We show them exactly what the returns are going to look like. Once they see one that they like, then they go forward with a traditional close. We work, I'm not sure how it's like in England, but here we use a title company. The money never comes directly to us. We will put the property in escrow. They will get it under contract. Then the closing will take place with a title company. When they buy it, they will be buying it with a tenant in place. And then as soon as we close, then they sign a management contract with us, and then we manage the property for them, and they get a check from us every month along with a P&L for the property. If they don't like us, they can fire us. If they want to sell the property, they can sell it at any time. So there's very little risk on their part. And the way we operate is the short answer is we are networked into a lot of wholesalers in Southeast Florida. We're able to pick up distressed properties at well below market price. We have our own crews. We do complete rehab on the properties. We gut them. We put in new kitchens, new bathrooms, new flooring. We paint them. And then we put tenants in them, and then we turn around and sell it to the investors.
So these are residential lets, as I'd call them.
They're residential properties. Probably one of the uniquenesses in my model is that our focus is on lower class housing. And there's a reason for that. Again, I'll try and give you a short answer. When you think of middle class housing, what you really get in middle class and upper class neighborhoods is mostly people in that category can afford to own their own houses. So you have a lot of buyers, and you usually don't have a ton of renters. So that tends to drive prices high and rents low. When you go into a lower class neighborhood, most of those people will never qualify for a mortgage. So you don't have a lot of buyers, which means it drives prices down, but everybody is a renter, so it drives rents up. So the ratio of rent to purchase price is substantially higher in lower class neighborhoods than it is in middle and upper class neighborhoods. And that's what allows us to get the returns. As someone once said, the sweet spot in the market is just above blighted to about $120,000 a year.
And when you talk about the income of 12 to 16%, I assume that's rental income. Is that what you mean by that? You're not talking capital gain?
That's not gross income. That's net income. We basically give the investor a spreadsheet, and what I show on the spreadsheet is I will show them the purchase price, then I will show them the financing. This assumes that you're leveraging it. So typically an investor puts 30% down on the property, and then I show the rent, and then I deduct the mortgage payment, the property tax, the insurance, our management fee. I deduct a vacancy rate, and I deduct maintenance. And I end up with a net income. That net income divided into the amount that you're investing, we usually are able to get about anywhere from 12 to 16% net income. So somebody investing, let's say $40,000 can typically expect anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 a year in income on that $40,000 investment.
Net income, that is there. That's fantastic.
And let me add something. When you add in appreciation and mortgage paydown, we're typically looking at returns of 20 to 30% a year.
No, absolutely. But once you get you mean capital? I call that capital appreciation on the value of the property. You mean? We assume a 3% a year appreciation, which for Florida is below the curve. The 20-year history is about 3.5. We're conservative, and remember, every month you're paying down the mortgage a little bit, so you're building an equity position. When you factor all of those things in, you end up with about 20 to 25% return on investment. One other thing I'll add that's interesting. The income, you're able to depreciate the house against that income. So if I get you 14% in real estate, that's the equivalent of making about 18% in a normal fixed income investment because of the tax benefit. Wow. It sounds really good, actually. So do you find these easy to rent once you've actually done this? I mean, obviously that's the key to making the income, isn't it?
Yes. That's where knowing where to buy is the key. We choose neighborhoods that are next to very busy areas. First of all, we're focused in only one area. We focus in southern Florida in what's called Palm Beach County and northern Broward County, where there's a lot of money, a lot of jobs, a very vibrant economy. And the houses that we buy are literally blocks from very, very rich neighborhoods. And what you find, again, lower class people, most of them can't afford cars. So they want to be a short commute from where the jobs are. They want to be able to take a bus to work.
Yep.
So we don't go into the outskirts of town. We buy distressed housing right in the heart of the city. And we typically can rent a house in a week.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds awesome, I'll say. And so, George, can I just talk about a few other things with you? So, what do you enjoy most about what you do?
I would say it's hard to pick out one thing, but one, of course, just the wheeling and dealing is exciting.
Yeah.
You know, you have to use your imagination. Every time we look at a property, we have to imagine what's it going to look like when we fix it up? How much is it really worth? And then negotiating on the price. And it's each one is like a project. So that part is exciting. And then the other two things are, one, again, I talk to people every day who have no idea how they can create an income when they retire. And as I help them, as I show them how to do it, as I see the light bulb go on, that's very exciting. The last part, which is really cool, we buy distressed houses, and when we rehab them, we make them look like new. We put in new kitchen, new bathrooms, new flooring, and our tenants are mostly lower-class people, a lot of single mothers with children. When they walk in and they see these houses all fixed up, usually the first person we show the house to rents it. And we get thank you calls from them saying, oh, my God, we haven't lived in a place this nice in a long time. So we help a lot of people, and that's very, very rewarding. Yeah,
that's awesome. So what is it that drives you, George? What is it that makes you do what you do? I mean, obviously, you sound like you're doing quite well there. So what is it that gets you out of bed every day to do what you do?
Well, of course, you can never have too much money. But that aside, a couple of things. One, I'll tell you something interesting. I spend a lot of time in Florida where there's a lot of people that are retired. I'm over 60. But I see people in their 60s and 70s that are retired that kind of sit around and do nothing. And when I talk to them, it just feels like they got nothing going on. All they want to talk about is restaurants and vacations. Yeah. And, I watch their brains just kind of slowly atrophying, and I'm not putting it down. And I want to work as long as I can. I hope at least until 70 or 75 if my health holds up, because I see just my mind going, my mind being exciting. Every day I read for at least an hour a day. I keep learning. I keep listening to lectures. And it's very exciting. And that's really what keeps me going, is just staying young.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, actually, because I've had that conversation with other people. And I think for some people, when they actually retire and they lose that focus in their life, it's quite... Statistics show that quite a number of people actually don't live for much longer, do they, in some cases? Because there must be some correlation between having an interest and enjoying what you're doing in life and longevity of life, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say, look, there's a big difference between working for a huge company and being a cog in the wheel and going to work 9 to 5 every day, sitting at a computer at a desk and counting the days, versus having your own business and building something and creating something. So, I feel that, the alternative to retirement is if you have the money, that it gives you the freedom to go pursue a dream. And that's really what I'm doing. Yeah. I spent 25 years in high tech, 30 years. And, I was kind of burnt out on it. And now I'm off pursuing a whole new career. I feel like a kid right out of college.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. So how do you relax when you're not working in your business?
Well, I love golf. I don't play very often, but I try to play every Saturday morning, and I jokingly call that my oasis in the week. And, of course, the networking is fantastic. I belong to a club. You make a lot of friends. I get a lot of introductions. In fact, some of my clients come from the golf club, so I enjoy that. My daughter is 12, and I know I'm probably only a couple of years away from her not wanting to be with me, so I try to spend every free moment with her that I can spend. Yeah. I love travel, but of course right now I'm traveling back and forth between Florida and California every month, so I'm getting it out of my system.
Sounds fantastic. Sounds like your life's a holiday there completely. It's fantastic. So, do you have any entrepreneur role models? I guess... To be honest, I don't think I do. Because I read from a lot of different people. Yeah. I don't know that I can pick anyone out that I can say, wow, this person, or this is the person that I'm following. Our model is a little bit different. Yeah. But let me add one thing on that. I'm of a belief, and it sounds obvious, but I think a lot of people don't realize it,
the cool thing about business is that the people that are the most successful in any industry will always write a book and tell you how they did it. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So on the one hand, I will say there's not one, but I could also probably rattle off about 10 or 20 books that have been very, very inspiring to me.
Yeah.
So I learn from other people, but I can't single out any one person.
Okay. George, can we just go back to the time before you were an entrepreneur now? Talk about what difficulties you had to overcome when you started your business.
Oh, yeah. Well, I said the unfortunate thing about being an entrepreneur is, unfortunately, most entrepreneurs always have to look over the edge of the cliff at least once or twice in their career. And I would say in my case, it's probably been more than once or twice. It's been about 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
So I worked for large companies like most people, although I went to a startup, but this was a very well-funded startup with venture capital money. So I call it a startup, but they started out with $50 million in funding. Then I went out on my own to a small PC company that failed after 1 year. I spent 4 months unemployed, and then I decided to become a sales rep. I went to work for one rep company, started with nothing. They start you out on a $3,000 a month draw. Spent a year and a half building up my business. Just when I was doing well, they went out of business. I then went to another rep company, spent another year and a half building things up, and then that one is the company that I ended up owning. And even as an owner, we had some fantastic years, and then when the dot-com bust came back in 2001, we went from $350 million to $20 million in 1 year.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
My partner and I went a year and a half without drawing paychecks, rebuilding that company. So, yeah, I've looked over the edge of the cliff many times.
But you survived, and that's the key, isn't it? So.
Yeah, you just have to believe. You have to just really, really believe that you're going to make it. It's hard sometimes, but you just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Well, I think that's part of the journey, isn't it, really? Because the fact is, there's always things happening. There's always things you've got to change. You've got to change with the market. There's things that you can't expect, like the dot-com bubble like you talked about there, or, I don't know, something like 2009 or 2008 or whenever it was when all the banking crisis was. So there's always something that's going to be affecting you from time to time. You've just got to learn to get through that and adapt. So, George, did you have any doubts that delayed you starting your business?
In this business, not really. The way I came into it, like I said, I started doing it for myself, and then to be honest, what got me into it is our largest line with my rep company 2 years ago changed their model and decided to terminate all of their reps worldwide. So I was faced with either rebuilding our rep company again or doing something else. And I guess I spent about 4 months looking at several options. 1 was to rebuild, 2 was to go off and do consulting, and 3 was the real estate. And after about 3 or 4 months of thinking about it, I decided the real estate was probably the best option for me. But once I started doing it, I've had no doubts because it's actually gone better than I've even expected.
Oh, that sounds good. And what mistakes did you make that slowed your journey?
Oh, God. Well, if I look at my total career, I made 1 or 2 bad decisions. I did join one startup that I worked very hard at for a year, and they basically failed. So that was definitely a setback. That's probably the biggest single one. Other than that, I can't really say that I made any major mistakes. I feel that I did it the right way. Started out in the corporate world, got a good foundation before I went off on my own. Yeah. And as a rep owner, like I said, we grew to be the largest rep in Silicon Valley. So for the most part, I think we did it right. When I look back, there are things I probably would do differently in retrospect. But along the way, I think we did a good job.
Okay. And what are some of the things that you did before you started your business that will be helpful tips for some of the listeners who haven't yet taken their first step of the entrepreneur's way?
Well, I think that the single biggest thing, and I was lucky, and I speak to a lot of people who aren't as lucky and they really struggle, is you gotta have a nest egg. You got to know that no matter how optimistic you are, I mean, as well as my business is doing, we didn't start cash flowing for a year. That you better have at least 2 years of income set aside that you can live on. And I see so many people that just go off and do it on a wing and a prayer, and they can't pay their bills. They can't make ends meet. They're all stressed out. Starting a business is stressful enough. You don't want to also be worrying about how you're going to pay your rent and how you're going to put food on the table. Then it just becomes overwhelming. So you've got to have that cushion. You've got to save your money or have a backer, obviously, or an investor that's going to give you the money. But you've got to be properly funded on the personal side as well as the business before you pull the plug. In my case, when I left my rep company, I sold out to my partner, and I had enough of a nest egg that I probably had at least 2 or 3 years of runway before I even needed to start making money. So I didn't feel the pressure to make money, to pay bills, so it allowed me to do it right.
Yeah, I think when you take that pressure away, it gives you clarity of thought, doesn't it? Because otherwise you're just distracted, and you probably make the wrong decisions sometimes because you have to make certain decisions just to pay the bills, I suppose.
Absolutely. Well, and as an owner of a rep company, we bring our salespeople on. We pay them a draw, but it's a very low draw. So we don't want it to be too comfortable. Hopefully, it was a commission job, and I saw a big difference. Some of the sales guys that I would hire are people had a working spouse that was making a living. So they could pay the bills, and they were able to build up their business right. In other cases, we hired people that were the sole breadwinner, and they were sweating it, they were stressing, and they were taking shortcuts. And again, I felt that the people that had the money behind them were much more effective.
Yeah, I think that comes through, doesn't it? Because when you're actually talking to somebody, if you're talking to them to serve yourself, then the person you're talking to sort of detects that somehow. Whereas if you talk to somebody you're trying to serve them, and you obviously get a benefit from that if you do well, then that means that they're more relaxed and they're much more likely to probably take you on and do business with you.
Absolutely.
So, George, what I'd like to do now is talk about your entrepreneurial journey. So, just a few questions here. So, can you talk about whether you think culture is important from the beginning in a business?
Probably yes. I don't know if you're familiar with the book called E-Myth.
I am indeed. Yes, it's a great book.
And he talks about the difference between why businesses fail versus franchises. And I don't know if culture is the right word, but certainly putting systems and procedures in place from the very beginning. The longer you wait, the harder it gets to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's crucial.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking there, actually, with that question, because I think some people, they employ people at the beginning in a business and they almost abdicate responsibility to someone else and say, well, that's your job, just sort it out. And if you don't have certain parameters and define how you want to do things, then ultimately you might get less than the predictable outcomes. And obviously the E-Myth talks about actually systemizing the whole thing, doesn't it? So it's actually a great example of how to create the right culture in a business, or I think it is. So knowing what you know now, is there anything that if you'd known it when you started out would have helped you to shortcut the learning curve?
No, to be honest, it's probably an unusual answer. And I'll tell you why I say that.
Okay.
I got very lucky because I came out of the rep business, but the partner that I partnered with had been in real estate for 15 years. And that's why I chose him as a partner. So on the real estate side, where I had a lot to learn, I was able to stand on his shoulders. And at the beginning, I let him make a lot of the decisions. And then as I came up to speed, I was able to be more involved. So because I chose somebody with the right experience, we were able to grow a lot quicker than if I had to learn it all myself. But I see people all the time that want to go into real estate and don't have the benefit of a partner like I had and just start learning from the beginning. And I see the learning curve is painful for them. I just got lucky.
Okay. And in your business, how much does gut feeling influence your decisions?
Oh, God, probably a lot. But I'll probably let me turn the answer around a little bit. In fact, I just read a book by I think it's William Keller, the founder of Keller Williams, one of the largest real estate brokers in the nation. Yeah. more than gut, I think in my case, knowing exactly what the criteria are that I'm looking for is very, very important, because you have to make a lot of quick decisions. In other words, when you say gut feeling, you can't go off and research every decision for hours and hours, especially in real estate. The good deals are never on the street that long. In fact, usually when we see a good property, we've got about 15 minutes to pull the trigger or someone else comes in and grabs it. So you really need to have really thought out what are the right neighborhoods, what are the right price points, what are the types of houses you're looking for. You need to have all of your criteria well thought out in advance, so when you see a good deal, you know it immediately and you can act fast on it.
Absolutely. George, life is made of constant change, whether we like it or not, and some would say the only constant in life is change.
Yes.
How do you try to keep up with change?
Well, part of it is just being flexible. Another part of it is constantly reading, and not just books, but of course really staying on top of the news and trying to anticipate it. And the more you can get out in front of it, in the case of real estate, obviously the market is always fluid, and my partner and I are always talking about, well, gee, if this happens, how will we react? If that happens, how will we react? So we try as much as possible. There's always black swans to anticipate what are the things that could happen that can change the way we do business and how will we react to them.
Actually, just thinking, with the real estate, obviously, how is it doing now in terms of the market? Because obviously it took quite a hit a few years ago, and it's presumably on a bounce back now to some extent. Is it a steady increase?
In most cities in the U.S., it's fully recovered back to what they call 2007 levels.
Yeah.
A few cities are actually above the old peak. Most of them are right at the old peak. Florida, the market I play in, is still about 25% below the peak, but continues to recover. Actually, for my business, I don't want to see housing prices recover continue to rise, because I'm focused on income as opposed to price appreciation.
Yeah.
And as prices go up, it hurts my returns, because the rents may not go up the same as prices, so the ratio of income goes down.
Yeah. And what is your favourite book on entrepreneurialism, business, personal development, leadership, or motivation? And can you tell us why you've chosen it? Now, you said you've read quite a few books here, so if you want, you can add more than one.
Yeah, there is a lot. But, I think in real estate, a lot of people will tell you the Bible is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that's what I tell people. If you read any book, probably you should read that one first.
Yeah.
Recently, Tony Robbins put out a book. I'm losing the title of it. But Tony Robbins, and it's something about making millions. And he talks about the whole mutual fund industry, and he talks about different ways to invest your money. It's a major undertaking. It was about a 600-page book, but I think it was very, very, very informative to me. And then lastly was the book about Steve Jobs, the Steve Jobs biography, which is also a major undertaking. I think it's about a 600-700-page book. But, following Steve Jobs' career, probably I would say to me one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our generation has to be Steve Jobs. I mean, because he didn't just do it once. He did it like 4 times. And, I mean, he brought Apple back from the dead. Most people in the Silicon Valley thought Apple there's no way that company could be resurrected. And to this day, I don't even know how he did it, but he did it. And to me, reading about his life really, really, really inspired me and taught me a lot.
Yeah, a very inspiring guy, actually. Everyone, when you have a busy life, listening to audiobooks is a great way to expand your knowledge in the time that you may be doing other things, such as driving or when you are at the gym. We have a special offer for you of a free audiobook of your choosing. To choose your free audiobook, go to www.freeaudioboooffer.com. As long as you haven't already signed up, you will qualify. George, we're now going to fast forward into the future. What one thing would you do with your business if you knew that you could not fail?
The main thing that I want to do is I just want to scale it as fast as I can, and to continue the way I'm scaling it is frankly borrowing money from right now I'm working with crowdfunding websites, and as long as I know that that we're going to be successful, I will take on more and more leverage and put more properties in the funnel. Right now, we're trying to do about 3 a month. I would like to scale up to about 10 a month.
Okay. And what skill, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most to double your business?
Well, like I said, the main thing is access to capital. And then the second thing, which is the skill that I'm working on the most, is to get better and better at using the internet to market for investors around the world. Right now, most of my marketing is just based on networking. I go to functions and I'm getting a lot of word of mouth. Yeah. But I would like to be able to expand my exposure into Europe, into the Far East. And to do that, I think you need to get better in internet marketing. And that's a skill that I'm trying to develop or trying to buy.
Actually, just one thing you talked about, George, in the previous question, you talked about crowdfunding and raising money with that. Can you just give us a brief overview of how that actually works?
Yeah, there's websites, like, for example, there's one called Realty Mogul, where basically, they screen this is another way that people could get better returns on their investment. So they're offering investors, anywhere from 7 to 10% returns because they're lending out money. These are short-term loans. They're construction loans, what they call hard money. And they get involved in projects, and they're able to lend money at anywhere from 9 to 13%. But to borrow from them, it's not just qualifying like with the way you would qualify for a home loan. You qualify as a person that they're willing to work with. In other words, when I got into Realty Mogul, we submitted a resume, we showed our background, then we had to show 10 documented deals. Yeah. We showed documenting that we bought the price, showing what we spent rehabbing, showing that we sold the house, showing that we made a profit to prove that we knew what we were doing. Then once they approved us as an investor, then we can bring them deals and they can fund them very quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's good that they do that, obviously, because otherwise people would lose lots of money, wouldn't they? So.
Yeah. So right now I'm working with 3 different crowdfunding sources, and it's changed my whole business because the banks have just gotten so conservative, it's hard to get money from them. And I feel like what's growing up in the U.S. is almost an alternative banking system. There's a lot of new companies getting into this, and I think it's an investment source as well as a funding source of the future, and it's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think it's happening. I think it's not just the US; it's happening here as well in the UK. I think it's happening. It's probably happening everywhere, I'd assume. So the banks, they're a bit slow on this, aren't they? I think, and it'll catch them eventually, possibly. I don't know. In 5 years from now, if a well-known business publication was publishing an article on your business after talking to your customers and suppliers, what would you like it to say?
Well, I would think the main thing I would like them to say is that we have a lot of satisfied customers and that they feel that we changed their lives. That would be the single most important thing.
Okay. We're now at the part of the show where you share 3 golden nuggets with us. So, George, what is your favourite quote and how have you applied it?
I would say my favorite quote. God, I'm going blank on that one. I hate to say it. Well, my favorite thing is just putting one foot forward, one foot in front of the other. Or someone once said to me, "Keep your eye on the ball." Yeah. Because and it's not a quote from a famous person, but just actually a PhD psychologist that I'm very good friends with, who is always saying, "Keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the ball." Because I think that there's so much distraction, and as you and I said, there's so many highs and lows, and the thing that keeps you going is just to stay focused on the goal and not let all these other things get you down. And I think that's very, very important to succeeding in business.
Try and avoid the shiny objects.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I will tell you something. I don't want to ramble, but one of the things I'm finding from a lot of entrepreneurs that I'm reading lately, they all come back to the same exact thing, that focus is very, very important. Actually, I will give you a very interesting quote that came from the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, that I read in a book. At a board meeting, supposedly about a year ago, he had not a board meeting, an analyst meeting. He gathered all the analysts in a conference room, and he had a conference table with all the Apple products on the table. And supposedly he looked up at the analysts, and he said, "We're a $200 billion company, and all of our products fit on this conference table.
Yeah.
And he looked at the investors and he says, you have no idea how many good ideas I turn down every month.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so profound.
Absolutely. In fact, it's interesting you say that, because I used to be in consumer electronics, and if you look at companies like Sony or Panasonic, and you look at their ranges, or Samsung, they've got huge ranges. And then you look at someone like Apple, and they've got such a small range of products, and that's obviously part of the key to their success.
Whatever market they get into, they own. They're always the best.
Yep.
They're the best. They define the market, and they're always the best when they jump into a market.
They also define the market as well, because they become, if you look at the MP3 players, for example, even people who haven't got an Apple product, people will talk about themselves having an iPod when it's not actually even an iPod that they have, or something like that. And that's probably the ultimate in any sector, to have people actually referring to your product as the category.
Absolutely. So, in my business, people come to me all the time and say, "Oh, what about houses in this market, or what about this, or what about this type of property?" And they're all probably good. But I think what makes us good is our focus. We've picked a geographic area that we know backwards and forwards. We've picked a price category that we know backwards and forwards. And I think it's our focus that makes us effective. And I think that's probably one of the single most important things that an entrepreneur needs to do is, and it doesn't necessarily mean one thing. It's funny now 10 minutes later, I got my quote. My favorite quote is, and I forget that it's Kennedy. Dan Kennedy said, one is the worst number in business. Yeah. And one of anything in business is bad. Yeah. One customer, one market. So you should have multiple things going on, but then at the same time, you need to be focused, which may sound contradictory, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, so, really what you're talking about there is obviously picking your niche, isn't it? And trying not to be everything to everybody. I think that's...
And owning it, being the best at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you have any favourite online resources that you could share with us that would be useful to our listeners and me?
God, there's a ton. It depends what you're trying to accomplish. I use Podio as a CRM tool, and I think it's fantastic. I just discovered a new tool that I love called Zapier.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of it? Do you know what it is?
I think I have, but I can't remember what it is.
It allows you very easily to create things that they call zaps that allows you to automate your workflow. So, for instance, I've created a workflow where I can enter a name into my database, and then it automatically transfers the information to my contact list, and it automatically transfers the information to my mailing list database, which then automatically sends a thank you letter or an introduction letter out to a customer. And it's a really, really amazing tool that just allows you to automate anything. And I'm not even that computer savvy, and I'm setting up zaps left and right.
Yeah, that sounds quite interesting. I'm sure I've heard of it, but I've never used it from what you're saying there. But yeah, I'll have a look at that. And what is your best advice to other entrepreneurs?
Well, my best advice, again, is I really think in the end it is about focus. That you need to choose a niche or something that you don't get rich being a jack of all trades. You get rich being a master of one. And whatever you choose, if you focus on it and you become the best at it, people will start to come to you. And that's the key to success.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. Everyone, if you didn't manage to get a note of George's favourite resource or his favourite books, you can find the links on George's show notes page. Just go to theentrepreneurway.com and search for George, or search for George Zweifler in the search box. George, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business?
Well, if anybody is interested in finding out more, I don't know if it's on the show notes, but we have two websites. Our main website is palmsassetmanagement.com. And then on the property management side, it's tcsmgtflorida.com. And we're always interested in talking to new customers. And it's been a great journey for me. And, people that are interested in being entrepreneurs, like I said, make sure you have the right funding behind you, but then go for it. It's really, really a great way to, much better to me, live your life than just, being a number in a big corporation.
We will put those links on the show notes page so people will be able to find those. George, it's been an absolute honour having you on the show. You really provided some great insight into being an entrepreneur, and it's really been, it's been such a pleasure. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to The Entrepreneur Way. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter @Neil D. Ball.